A 3-year-old boy is found wandering alone, his diaper soiled, and his mother brutally murdered at home. Police quickly blame his father after finding a suspicious note, and he's sentenced to life in prison. But the truth is far darker. He's innocent, and the real killer has been protected for 25 years. Now, the boy who lost everything is grown, and he's about to expose the man who murdered his mother and stole his father's life. On the morning of August 13, 1986, in the quiet suburbs of North Austin, Texas, a man found 3-year-old Eric Morton wandering alone outside his home at 9114 Hazelhurst Drive. When the neighbor recognized the boy and brought him back, he was met with a chilling silence. Inside the house, he discovered a horrific scene. Eric's mother, Christine Morton, had been brutally murdered. When Sheriff Jim Boutwell from Williamson County arrived, he found Christine's body hidden under a blanket, with a blue suitcase and a wicker basket placed on top. She had been beaten to death with a blunt object. Strangely, there were no signs of forced entry, theft, or sexual assault. However, investigators found a note on the dresser written by her husband, Michael Morton, which soon became the focal point of the case. Later that day, as Michael left work to pick up his son from daycare, he learned that Eric had never been dropped off. When he called home, Sheriff Boutwell answered and asked him to return immediately. Upon arrival, Michael was told that his wife had been murdered. He asked to see her, but was refused.
When Sheriff Boutwell told me that Chris was dead, I asked if it was murder. He said yes. I asked to see her. I wanted, not proof, but, I needed to see her. The sheriff refused.
All the questions were adversarial, accusatory. It became clear to me that the sheriff showed up, looked around, and, okay, husband did this.
During questioning, he quickly realized the sheriff believed he was the killer. A few weeks later, on September 25, 1986, deputies arrived at his house to arrest him for his wife's murder. As Michael held Eric in his arms, the little boy was pulled away screaming while his father was handcuffed and taken away.
I don't remember the exact words, but I said something along the lines of, "You've got to be kidding. What?" I turned off some stuff in the kitchen. I grabbed Eric and I told him that I wanted to call a friend to come get him. And he said that wouldn't be necessary.
6 months later, on February 9, 1987, Michael Morton went on trial for the murder of his wife.
Innocent people think that if you just tell the truth, you've got nothing to fear from the police.
I never seriously thought that they would convict me.
The prosecution, led by District Attorney Ken Anderson, built their case on circumstantial evidence, focusing heavily on the note Michael had left for Christine after an argument about sex the night before her death.
Prosecutors say he beat his wife to death after she refused to have sex with him on his birthday.
District Attorney Ken Anderson today focused his line of questioning on Morton's infrequent sexual relationship with his wife.
Anderson portrayed Michael as a frustrated husband who snapped when Christine refused to sleep with him on his birthday. He claimed Michael killed her in a rage and fabricated an emotional story to convince the jury.
A Williamson County man took the witness stand today in his own murder trial. Morton broke down in tears today as District Attorney Ken Anderson showed him photos of his wife's body.
Michael took the stand and testified that Christine was alive when he left for work around 6 a.m. He explained that the note was not angry, but playful. But the jury was swayed when medical examiner Dr. Roberto Bayardo testified that Christine's time of death was around 1 a.m., 4 hours before Michael claimed to have last seen her.
In other trial news, damaging testimony yesterday in the wife-beating murder trial of Michael Morton.
The jury relied on the testimony of Travis County medical examiner Dr. Roberto Bayardo.
This supposed scientific evidence shattered his alibi, even though Bayardo's estimation was unreliable and based solely on stomach contents, an unaccepted method of determining time of death. During closing arguments, Anderson went even further, fabricating a claim that Michael had sexually assaulted Christine after killing her, though there was no evidence of such an act. His dramatic performance, complete with tears, convinced the jury. On February 17, 1987, Michael Morton was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison.
Late this afternoon, a jury found Morton guilty of murdering his wife last summer and then sentenced him to life in prison.
Anderson publicly stated that a life sentence was too good for him, insisting he should have received the death penalty.
It got sickening after a while to watch him cry at the wrong times, and he seemed only to cry for himself. Just totally without any remorse whatsoever for killing his wife.
When they announced the time, the aggravated life, I was stunned. It literally knocked the wind out of me. My knees buckled, my butt hit the chair. Had that chair not been there, I'd have hit the floor.
As Michael was led away in handcuffs, he maintained his innocence, but no one believed him. The real killer remained free. For the next 17 years, Michael languished behind bars, filing numerous appeals that were all denied. His only comfort came from brief, court-ordered visits with his son Eric, who had been raised by Christine's sister and taught to believe that his father was a murderer.
There was court-ordered visitation. Eric would have to be brought to me by my sister-in-law. Visitation is like oxygen. I would love seeing him, but I could also see that he was becoming more distant. He was becoming something of a stranger. The first time I heard him call my sister-in-law Mom, it startled me. As he got a little bit older, and he started, getting into puberty and becoming a teenager, some of the visits were feeling a little forced. One day, I got a letter from him that he said he would like to suspend the visits, not do them anymore.
As Eric grew older, he became distant. Eventually, he wrote to his father asking to end the visits. Heartbroken, Michael agreed, on the condition that Eric tell him face-to-face. During their final meeting, Eric couldn't look him in the eye, as he confirmed it would be their last visit. Michael simply told his sister-in-law, "Take care of my son," and walked away. In 2004, after nearly 2 decades in prison, Michael's case reached the Innocence Project, a nonprofit organization dedicated to exonerating wrongfully convicted individuals through DNA testing.
2004, the New York Innocence Project called me and asked me to take the case. It took me a minute to grasp it because I thought, are you calling the right number? I'd never had any kind of a criminal case before, but they said that they wanted me.
The project contacted John Raley, a Houston-based civil attorney with no criminal defense experience, to take on Michael's case. When Raley reviewed the trial files, he was immediately struck by the weak evidence. There were no witnesses, no history of violence, and Michael had passed 2 lie detector tests. Moreover, Raley found that Dr. Bayardo's conclusions about time of death were scientifically baseless. When Raley visited Michael in prison, he was deeply moved by his sincerity. Michael calmly recounted the days before Christine's death, how they had celebrated his 32nd birthday with their son, Eric, and how happy they had felt as a family. That night, after Christine fell asleep, Michael had left a light-hearted note before heading to bed.
I asked him, what happened on August 12th and 13th, 1986? Take me through those 2 days in as much detail as you can.
August 12th, 1986, I turned 32. It's one of the best days of my life. We had 3 dark years where we had a sick child, and everything seemed to be heading up. So we all went to the City Grill. I remember feeling really, really good as we were leaving, and Eric was walking between us, and we each had a hand, and you know how you'll sometimes pick him up, and it just felt really good. This is what it's about. Things are great here. We got home, finally got Eric to bed, and if you're married and it's your birthday, she fell asleep. I went, baby. I left a little note on no big deal. This happened. And at 5 o'clock next morning, the alarm went off. Showered, shaved, dressed, and it's the last time I saw her live.
I didn't really have the opportunity to grieve for her. Everything changed so rapidly away from her to me.
Chris had this amazing laugh. She would throw her head back and laugh, and you couldn't help but laugh with her. It was just so genuine. She was smart. She wasn't just sociable. She had a head on her shoulders. Everybody liked her. I was lucky that she went out with me.
Don't claim to have psychic powers, but I cross-examine people for a living, and I can usually tell if people are fibbing. There was nothing about this man that did not speak from a place of integrity and honesty. They took his son out of his arms and handcuffed Michael, and Michael looks back and sees Eric reaching out and screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." And this little boy that had just lost his mother now was losing his father. It affected me as a father because I thought about my children. I left amazingly moved by that, and I came home to my wife, Kelly, who I asked for advice on a lot of things. And I said, "Kelly, my God, he's innocent. We have to get him out." And she looked at me in the eye and she said, "Then do it."
The next morning, he left early for work, never imagining it would be the last time he saw his wife alive. Rayleigh and his team began digging through the evidence. They discovered that during the initial 1986 investigation, deputies had found a blue bandana stained with blood about 100 yards from the Morton home. The bandana was collected but never tested or presented in court. DNA testing wasn't available at the time, so it was stored and forgotten. Rayleigh believed this could be the key to proving Michael's innocence. If the bandana contained both Christine's and another person's DNA, it would prove someone else committed the crime. However, when Rayleigh and the Innocence Project requested access to the evidence, the Williamson County Sheriff's Office refused. It became clear that the district attorney's office was deliberately blocking them, likely because they feared what the tests would reveal. Rayleigh filed a motion to compel the release of the evidence, but by 2005, no response had been received. Finally, he decided to call the district attorney directly, setting in motion a legal battle that would eventually uncover one of Texas's most infamous wrongful convictions. John Bradley was the district attorney of Williamson County when John Rayleigh filed the motion for DNA testing. Rayleigh called him directly, introducing himself and explaining his intentions clearly. Rayleigh was stunned by the statement, unsure what Bradley truly meant. What he didn't yet realize was that Bradley's mentor was none other than Ken Anderson, the same prosecutor who had put Michael Morton behind bars. Anderson had since become a respected district judge with powerful connections in Williamson County, but buried in his old files was evidence he desperately wanted to keep hidden, evidence that could expose his wrongdoing. Bradley, understanding the consequences for his mentor, rejected Rayleigh's motion and blocked access to the DNA testing. Rayleigh soon discovered just how deep the corruption ran. Meanwhile, Michael Morton continued to lose more than just his freedom. When his son Eric turned 18, Michael received a letter informing him that Eric intended to legally change his last name and be adopted by his aunt and uncle. On March 7, 2008, over 3 years after filing the motion, Rayleigh finally had his first hearing in the case. He told the court about the bloody blue bandana found near the Mortons' home, explaining that it had never been tested for DNA. He argued that the state had blocked every attempt to uncover the truth. But unknown to Rayleigh, John Bradley had already influenced the outcome. The judge had been convinced to deny the motion even before the hearing began. When the request was rejected, Rayleigh was furious. He got into his car and drove nearly 200 miles to Georgetown to confront Bradley face to face. Still seething when he arrived at the DA's office, Rayleigh did something completely uncharacteristic. Loud enough for everyone to hear, he said, "What are you afraid of? What would you do if the test results exonerated him and identified someone else as the real murderer? Because I can handle the truth. Can you, sir?" Then he turned and left. At that point, his frustration was overwhelming, not just with the system, but with the sense that truth itself was being deliberately buried. Financially, things were also difficult. The case was pro bono, draining his time and energy without income. He admitted later that there was temptation to give up, but his conscience wouldn't allow it. Then one morning, Rayleigh received a call from Michael Morton. After 21 years in prison, completely cut off from his son, Michael could have easily taken the deal for his freedom, but his integrity wouldn't allow it. By 2010, Rayleigh had been fighting for 6 years when he finally appeared before the Third Court of Appeals. He argued passionately that there was no legal reason to deny testing the bloody bandana. When asked what he would do if the results went against his client, he replied simply, "There's only one way to find out." Still, DA John Bradley tried to sway public opinion. Speaking to reporters, he mocked Rayleigh's request as a pipe dream, saying he'd only consider testing the bandana if Michael confessed. But finally, after years of resistance, the court ruled in Rayleigh's favor. The DNA test could go forward. While waiting for the results, Rayleigh's office submitted a Freedom of Information Act request for access to Ken Anderson's original files. What they found was devastating. Inside the prosecution's file was clear evidence of Michael's innocence that had been deliberately withheld.
Michael Morton was convicted of killing his wife and sentenced to life in prison. His attorneys say the case now boils down to testing a bloody bandana found behind the home where Christine Morton was beaten to death. If that critical piece of evidence contains blood from the crime scene, it could show someone else did it. But Williamson County DA John Bradley says that's a pipe dream.
If I got a promise from Michael Morton that he would accept criminal responsibility for killing his wife, should the bandana exclude any other mystery killer, you know what? I would consider doing that.
And I said, Judge, we're paying for this. All we want to know is the truth. The state has fought us every step of the way. We have fought too hard, and we've come too far to get to this moment and have it taken away. Finally, after fighting for 6 years, the Court of Appeals ruled that we could do DNA testing on the bloody bandana.
The original investigation had uncovered a muddy footprint behind the house, strange fingerprints on the sliding door, and reports of a man in a green van seen near the Morton home in the days leading up to the murder, none of which were shared with the defense. Most shocking of all was a statement written by Christine's mother, Rita, based on a conversation she had with 3-year-old Eric on the day of the funeral. The boy told her that the monster had hit his mother and thrown a blue suitcase on the bed. When asked if his daddy was there, he said, "No, Mommy and Eric was there." That single statement, if revealed, could have exonerated Michael immediately. Instead, prosecutors told Rita that the monster must have been Michael himself, and the truth was buried for 25 years. By June 2011, Michael had spent a quarter-century in prison. Then, finally, the DNA results came back. Rayleigh visited him in the family room at the prison, smiling for the first time in years. The test showed that the bandana contained Christine Morton's DNA and the DNA of another man, not Michael. When the profile was entered into the national database, it matched a convicted felon named Mark Allen Norwood, a violent criminal with a long record of burglaries and assaults. Rayleigh's team kept digging and soon discovered another unsolved murder, eerily similar to Christine's. 2 years after Christine's death, a woman named Deborah Baker was beaten to death in her home just a few miles away. Both victims were bludgeoned. Both had household objects piled on their bodies, and neither was sexually assaulted. DNA from Deborah's crime scene matched Norwood as well. After 25 years, the real killer had finally been identified. Norwood was arrested in 2011 and charged with the murders of Christine Morton and Deborah Baker. As the truth unraveled, Ken Anderson publicly apologized, claiming the system failed. But Christine's daughter, Caitlin Baker, confronted him, saying, "He's making excuses." He let Norwood go. "My mother could be alive today if he'd done his job." Eventually, Anderson became the first prosecutor in U.S. history to serve jail time for misconduct, leading to a wrongful conviction. Norwood was convicted of both murders and sentenced to life in prison. After his release, Michael Morton finally walked free into the sunlight, tilting his head back to feel the warmth on his face. John Rayleigh later arranged a dinner at his home, where Michael was reunited with his son, Eric. When they saw each other, they embraced tightly, the years of pain dissolving into tears. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon for more interesting videos like this.